but it's facing competition and opposition.
I think we're going to get 50 Republicans to vote for federalism, and I'll make a prediction. A couple of Democrats are going to come on board because their state does so well.
This pushes those choices back to states and would increase the cost to my state by $1 billion by 2027. I think we will genuinely struggle as a state to meet that cost. I've got a lot of concerns about how it will affect Delaware and how it will affect the country, and I plan to vote against it.
Joining me right now is the White House Director of Legislative Affairs for President Donald Trump, Marc Short. Marc, it's good to have you on the program this morning. Welcome.
Maria, thanks for having me on.
Will there be enough support to get this bill passed? Bottom line.
Maria, we think we're going to get to 50 votes. We think, more importantly, it's essential to the American people that we do. Obamacare continues to crumble, and I think the reason that we're having a renewed vote and a renewed effort right now is because the American people have spoken since the summer to say, look, we are getting crushed by increasing rates. Rates across the country, on average, have increased 105% per individual plan over the last 4 years. Insurance companies continue to flee the markets. Right now, 50% of our country, in fact, over 1,400 counties in America, have only one insurer option, which means there's no competition. And Maria, what's being lost in this debate so far is that coming January, taxes that were written in the original Obamacare law were delayed by Democrats. They don't come into effect till 2018. So every American who has an insurance plan, whether provided by your employer or you get individually, you get a brand new tax hit on you in 2018.
Yeah.
This is our last opportunity to repeal Obamacare.
Yeah, you're absolutely. Look, we all know the issues around Obamacare, and the president makes an important point there about saving Obamacare. But you've got to explain to us why so many of these powerhouse health groups are against the bill. The Kaiser Family Foundation, for example, yesterday said that the Graham-Cassidy plan would decrease federal funding for states by $160 billion from 2020 to 2026. Then you've got powerhouse groups like the American Hospital Association, the American Medical Association coming out against the Graham-Cassidy proposal. You know, the AHA, Marc, it represents 5,000 hospitals and daycare providers. They say that this could put coverage at risk for tens of millions of Americans. So how do you push back on all these powerhouse groups? You've got the American Medical Association, other groups like AARP, all saying this is not the bill.
Right. Maria, let's keep in mind, when Obamacare passed, what you did is you created an individual mandate by law requiring every American to buy insurance, and you forced an employer mandate to provide insurance for employees. The insurance companies love that, because by law, you're creating an artificial demand. You're saying the government is forcing you to carry insurance. So it's no surprise if you're looking to actually repeal that mandate that a lot of these groups are opposed to it. They don't want Americans to have the freedom to choose what plans they want or not. They want the government to force you to have to carry that insurance. And further, on the dollars, what they're looking for is they're in essence looking for just a massive bailout from the federal government. In many cases, they're looking for the government to guarantee payment of these so-called CSR payments that provide money to insurance companies to basically subsidize many of the plans. That's the route that they're looking to go. So we knew that we would have opposition from many of these groups from the start. But we think what we're doing is providing a better plan for the American people, not special interests here in Washington, D.C.
Well, this is also going to shift an enormous amount of responsibility to the states. Tell us about the governors and what you're hearing from governors today, because you need that support if you're going to be able to shift this over to the states.
I think you'll be seeing many more governors in the coming days coming out in support of the plan, Maria. But let's keep in mind, there's a narrative out there that says that with Graham-Cassidy, they're winners and losers. Right now, they're winners and losers. When Obamacare passed, it created an unfair system. Today, California and New York receive over 30% of the federal dollars, whereas states nearly equal in population, Florida and Texas, receive less than 10. So when they begin doing their numbers and saying who's going to be winners and losers, they're basing it off an unfair comparison of where it stands today, as opposed to what Graham-Cassidy's looking to do is to allocate the dollars based upon the population of your state. It's a more equitable distribution. So this analysis of winners and losers is based on a system already that has chosen winners and losers. And so therefore, if you're a state like California and New York, they allege that somehow you're getting less. We believe that every state is a winner, Maria, because the governor will have the flexibility to choose a plan in Medicaid and in the private insurance market that best suits their constituents, which means if you're California and you want to have a more socialist medicine process, you can do that.
Yeah.
Or if you're a state that wants to have a more free market plan, you can do that too. It's a federalist approach, which we think is what our framers always intended.
Has the president spoken with Murkowski and Collins, who, of course, represented challenges throughout this process?
The White House has continued to engage, I think, the senators who at this point are most critical, and we think that really it comes down to four, and that is Rand Paul, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, and John McCain. Those are the four senators who will likely decide the fate of whether or not Obamacare is repealed.
If you don't get their support, I mean, do you think you can get Democrat support?
I think, as Lindsey Graham has said, there's a lot of reasons for some of the Democrat members, particularly in non-expansion states, that have the opportunity that this is a benefit to them. So we're hopeful we can earn Democrat support, but I'm not unrealistic in that expectation, Maria. In many cases, we went to Democrats even back during the transition and asked what our opportunity to work with them was. Right. And they even acknowledged, they said, look, we know it's collapsing, we know what's happened in our state, but we can't be part of something that would be called repeal because it's too essential to the previous president's legacy. And I think that that's the dilemma that we face.
We're also looking at a legacy built on what we're going to hear from taxes, right? Vice President Mike Pence is headed to his home state of Indiana later today in a big push to overhaul the nation's tax code. And we're all watching next week the White House and GOP leaders releasing that tax framework of what the president says will be the largest tax cut in American history. What will we know next week that we don't already know, Mark?
Well, Maria, I think you're going to hear more specifics on what individual rates will be, how many rates are. We are looking, as we've said, to simplify the tax code. Right now, as opposed to 7 rates, we think 3 or 4 is what's optimal. Additionally, you're going to hear a plan that simplifies it by eliminating so many of the unfair deductions that special interests in Washington, D.C. have advanced to protect certain industries. We think a broader system that is simpler is more fair. And I think most essentially, you're going to hear a reduction in corporate tax rate, because the reason that that's important is you've covered on your network is so many companies have moved overseas their company because of the unfair tax code. It's outdated here in America. And we've fallen behind. By reducing that rate, we believe we can keep jobs here in America, keep companies here, and that's an essential part of the president's plan, is keeping jobs in America.
Are you going to be able to get the support for eliminating the deduction on state and local income tax? Because that's really where some senators and congressmen are saying, like a Congressman Peter King said to me specifically, I can't vote for that. My constituents pay too much in that tax. What do you think?
I think that's you're identifying a key challenge that we're going to have, is convince them as to why it's better for America to have a more simple tax system. And we believe there's plenty of things by reducing the corporate rate and reducing primarily the middle income rate that benefits those states, even like New York and California.
So what do you give on that? How do you placate those who are saying, I need something in return?
Well, I think they are gaining by reducing the corporate rate. Hopefully that many of the companies inside their districts will benefit. By reducing middle class rates, hopefully they'll be benefiting. I think America benefits. Suppose looking at parochially, how about we look at some of the country benefits? How many people in our country will benefit from a simpler tax system? But there's another question, is for those states that have those huge deductions, why should people reside in other states be essentially subsidizing it for states that have high income taxes? So we think that that's relatively unfair.
Yeah, well, we'll see if the president can get support on this. If you can deliver this health care Graham Cassidy bill and then follow it up with a budget and follow it up with tax reform, obviously